Just another beautiful day in Colorado. So, we're going to be backpacking, but this time we're going to be backpacking right on the border of Colorado and New Mexico. It's about a 6 mile hike from the start of the trail to the end. And the end of the trail, there's a giant field and kind of like a pit, and there's a stream running through it, and you can fish that stream. The trailhead itself is located far enough from our house so that driving out here and then staying in a hotel is actually worth it. Otherwise, we'd have to drive about 4 hours to the border and then we'd have to go hike in after that too. So that can be kind of too much. As far as where we're staying at the old Stagecoach Hotel in Antonito, I meant to say, and it was built in 1911, so it's over 100 years old. Antonito is home to roughly 647 people as of the 2020 census, located in Conejos County at an elevation of about 7,888 feet. It's small in size, just over 1 square kilometer, but huge in character. Originally known as San Antonio Junction, it was a sheep herding outpost until Denver and Rio Grande Railroad arrived in the 1880s and changed everything. Soon enough, the town grew into a stopping point on the rail line and formally incorporated in 1889. The Cumbers and Toltec Scenic Railroad begins here. It's a vintage narrow gauge steam train that winds 64 miles south to Chama, New Mexico. Riding it feels like stepping back into the railroad's golden age through jaw-dropping mountain vistas. Another attraction that brings tourists here is Cano's Castle. This is the town's most eccentric attraction. Built by a local artist, Donald Cano Espinoza, the castle towers with recycled materials, beer cans, hubcaps, bike wheels, and more. Rising up to 90 feet, it's folk art at its wacky best and a reflection of Antonito's creative spirit. For architecture lovers and spiritual history buffs, Antonito is home to Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish, the oldest church building and congregation in Colorado, dating to 1857. Antonito is rooted in Hispanic heritage. Over 90% of the population identifies as Hispanic or Latino. That gives Antonito a warm, welcoming vibe. Its small downtown has a handful of shops and restaurants and lodging, with much of its architectural character untouched by time. After Colorado legalized recreational cannabis, Antonito, being just across the New Mexico border where it was still illegal, became a destination for cross-border visitors. That brought tax revenue which helped boost the local budget and revitalize the town with new businesses and infrastructure projects like the 2015 highway rebuild through downtown. The trail runs approximately 15 miles uphill from the main campground and climbs from around 8,500 feet to 11,750 feet, where it meets the Continental Divide. This trail was created and maintained by the U.S. Forest Service, Rio Grande National Forest, to provide access for recreation, fishing, horseback riding, backpacking, and winter activities into the remote valley and high country meadows. Over time, integration into resources like All Trails, Forest Service recreation guides, and Northern Colorado hiking websites helped it emerge from local lore into broader awareness. Fishing reports praised its trophy brown trout, and hikers described the serene progression through first, second, and third meadows up to the lakes. Originally an informal path used by miners, hunters, and anglers, the trail was eventually formalized. It dawned as a well-maintained multi-use trail, corrals for horses, dispersed campsites, and water access points were developed under the USFS supervision. Though the exact date of initial construction isn't widely published, the trail's continued upkeep is evident. Signage, trail junctions, and updated passes into wilderness regions testify to its official status by at least the early mid 2000s. The latest FS updates list the trail as maintained for year round use until snow blanketing closes it, open to hikers, horseback riders, bikers outside the wilderness, and snowshoers or cross country skiers in the winter. Long before the trail existed, the Canejos River Valley, into which the creek flows, was first explored by Spanish and Mexican settlers in the early 19th century. Mexican land grants in the 1830s brought in Hispanic families to this rugged, high desert, cultivating the valley with small scale irrigation and communal ranching traditions that endured into the mid 1800s. By the mid 1850s, Anglo settlers arrived, miners, ranchers, and eventually railroad workers during the transition from Mexican to U.S. governance. Ranching grew alongside subsistence farming, especially cattle and sheep grazing, which were vital in feeding both settlers and miners in the remote region. Although the Canejos area was not a major mining hub like Crete or Lake City, the broader San Juan Mountains were dotted with small scale gold, silver, and base metal operations. Timber for shafts and supplies for camps often came via valley communities like those along the creek. These operations formed a patchwork of prospecting camps in higher altitudes into the late 19th and early 20th centuries. While we don't have specifics for this creek valley itself, it's fair to say nearby streams and ridgelines saw seasonal activity, pack horse trails, cabins, and places where prospectors and stockmen intersected. The creek's meadows, accessing alpine pastures through the trail's route, were long used for summer grazing. Hispanic descendant ranch families in the valley, descended from early 19th century settlers, drove livestock up into the high meadows during the warm months. The land grant culture blended with Anglo ranch traditions after U.S. annexation. Cattle and sheep were moved through the creek valleys, like this one, to high country pastures, fostering informal footpaths and animal tracks crisscrossing the watershed that eventually evolved into more defined trails. In the early 1900s, the U.S. Forest Service created the Rio Grande National Forest, 1908, formalizing land use boundaries and trail planning. As mining waned, grazing and small family ranching remained. The Forest Service gradually developed trail access. Informal ranch and stock routes became forest trails, maintained for horseback riders, anglers, hunters, and hikers. The trail likely followed these earlier stock lanes, climbing through meadow clusters named First, Second, and Third Meadows, places ranchers used to summer their stock. Over time, the Forest Service formally flagged the route, cleared it, and provided amenities like corrals and campsite spacing for recreational use. Much of this history survives in oral memory and local lore. Descendant families still recall driving livestock into upper reaches, fishing remote creeks, and relying on hand-dug routes through alpine terrain. These stories, along with regional heritage organizations in Canejos County, preserve the identity of seasonal ranching and early mining pursuits in the high San Juan country. While no detailed archival mine site logs exist specifically for the creek, regional patterns suggest that trail corridors serve dual seasonal purposes, transporting livestock and providing access for prospectors seeking high country mineral returns. When you're hiking the creek today, what you actually tread is a layered landscape. of natural pathways originally used by elk and deer, and stock lanes created by Hispanic and Anglo ranch families moving sheep and cattle into the high meadows, as well as prospecting trails from miners seeking gold and silver in the upper valley, which is where I am right now, and also Forest Service trail infrastructure formalized in the 20th century as a recreational access trail. So every switchback, every meadow plateau you cross, they carry echoes of ranch hands, prospectors, and early settlers living off the land before the trail became a leisure route. Where brown trout are wild and water runs cold and solitude is part of the catch, if you're into fly fishing and find yourself anywhere near here, you're in luck because this creek offers one of the most peaceful and rewarding small stream experiences in the San Juan Mountains. It's tucked into the Rio Grande National Forest, and while it doesn't have the fame of the Arkansas or Gunnison rivers, it's the kind of hidden gem you'll want to return to every season. The creek is known primarily for wild brown trout. The main attraction, these fish are wily, healthy, and can grow surprisingly large for a creek this size, up to 16 plus inches in the right stretches. It's also known for its brook trout, smaller, colorful, and often found higher up in the system near the meadows or headwaters, and also its cutthroat trout, less common but occasionally show up in the upper tributaries or nearby alpine lakes if you explore further up the valley. These fish aren't stocked. The creek supports wild, naturally reproducing populations, which makes every catch more satisfying and a little more challenging. The creek offers several zones depending on how far you're willing to hike. The first meadow, which is easy to reach from the campground, gentle flow, grassy banks, and open casting lanes. The trout here are eager but spooky, so long leaders and soft presentation matter. And there's a lot of terrestrials, hoppers, ants, and beetles that work well in the summer. The second meadow, which is where we're going to be staying, this is where things start to get interesting. Larger, deeper pools and better fish, brown trout in the 16 to 14-inch range. The fish here are smarter, they've seen flies before, and are easily spooked. Dry hopper setups or small nymphs under indicators tend to perform well. Think pheasant tails, copper johns, or zebra midges. There is also a third meadow with fewer anglers, tougher hike, and more solitude. There's smaller brookies start appearing here, and dry flies dominate, parachute Adams, elk hair, caddis, and stimulators. And make sure you bring spare spray because this is true wilderness. As far as tips from the locals, you should try to always stay stealthy. The water's clear and the fish are alert. Use a long leader 9 to 12 feet and keep your shadow off the water at all times. During the time of your visit, late June through early September is the peak fishing season up here, and the snow melt in May makes things high and fast, and the late fall everything freezes over. Another tip is to watch for hatches, PMDs, and caddis come off in the afternoons, especially in the lower meadows. And also, whenever you're catching and releasing, since this is a wild fishery, it's important to protect it. Always make sure you use barbless hooks and wet hands. Also, barbless hooks are really good because if you hook yourself in the back of the neck, you don't have to rip the hook out of the back of your neck. As far as fly fishing, a 3 or 4 weight fly rod, 8.5 feet is perfect. Waders early in the season and wet wading by July. Dry flies, nymphs, and a few streamers, and polarized sunglasses for spotting fish in the clear pools. And the best part of all of this is that our campsite is like 30 feet away from the creek. It looks like it's going to start raining really soon, so I already have a fire started. That way I can cook this bratwurst really quick. And then if it does start raining, we at least have hot coals. That way we can start another fire. And after that, we're going to go fish the second field, which is right next to our campsite. If there's ever been a creek made for Tenkara fishing, it's this creek. For the uninitiated, Tenkara is a traditional Japanese form of fly fishing that uses a long, flexible rod, no reel, and just a fixed line and fly. It's perfect for small creeks, tight water, and quick adjustments, which just happens to describe this creek, from first meadow all the way to its headwaters. This creek is rarely more than 20 feet across and often narrower. In many spots, you're casting no more than 10 to 15 feet, often underneath overhanging branches or beside grassy banks. That's Tenkara's sweet spot. You don't need long casts. You need accuracy, control, and delicacy, all of which Tenkara delivers. With a long Tenkara rod, 11 to 13 feet, you can keep most of your line off the water, which is a huge advantage in Elk Creek's glassy pools and cut banks. You're less likely to spook fish and more likely to get a drag-free drift, especially critical in second meadow, where the bigger browns are very picky. And if you're hiking in past the third meadow or heading towards the lakes, Tenkara makes packing easy. The rod telescopes down to the size of a thermos, and your whole kit can fit in a small sling pack or vest. No reels, no extra spools, just rod, line, tippet, and flies. Most of the fish are anywhere between 8 and 14 inches, but browns pushing 16 plus inches are known to lurk in deeper holes, especially under cut banks in the second meadow. These aren't stalkers, they're wild and wary. Tenkara purists often stick with simple sakasa kibari, reverse hackle wet flies, but the creek rewards a little flexibility. If you try dry flies, parachute Adams, elk hair caddis, griffs, gnat, and foam hoppers also work great in August. As far as wet flies and kabari, sakasa kabari, black or olive, soft hackle hare's ear, and the killer bug, which is great for pocket water. And if you like fishing with nymphs, if the fish are deep, pheasant's tail, zebra midge, and copper johns, size 16 to 20, with the precise drifts and natural presentation Tenkara allows, even wary fish can be coaxed up in slower pools. So as far as locations of where to fish with Tenkara, the first meadow provides easy access from the campground, slower pools and riffles which are ideal for beginners, and the fish are more forgiving but quick to spook, so try to keep your profile low. The second meadow is the best combination of challenge and reward. There's a lot bigger fish under the undercuts and along deep banks, and Tenkara shines here for stealthy dapping and delicate drifts. And as far as the third meadow and beyond, there's way less water and more brookies, and it's often choked with brush, but short casts rule here, and it's a great place to fish kabari-style flies downstream into tiny riffles. So as far as what I was just using a regular Euro nymphing rig with a Duracell bomb on the bottom and another generic nymph attached to it too. We ended up forgetting some of our pots and pans, but we were able to cook macaroni inside of a cup, so now we're just putting away all of our food. We walked down the trail maybe 100 yards, and we're just going to take this rock, throw it over a tree branch, and then tie our backpack up into the tree with it. We're going to try to fish downstream from our campsite tomorrow because we think that the rougher whitewater rapids would be better suited for our Euro nymphing rigs, and that the slower waters up in the field are probably best for hopper droppers, which we don't really use hopper droppers anymore. But anyways, I'm going to hang my gun up, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in the morning. Just another beautiful day in Colorado, and today we're skipping breakfast and we're going straight to fishing. We were thinking that since Euro nymphing is usually done in rougher water, that we would head downstream and try fishing the whitewater rapids downstream and seeing how that works out. There's just one thing, and it's that there's not a lot of access from the trail heading up here to the stream, and the stream is sometimes really far away from the trail, so we're gonna have to look. It was raining last night, and I don't know what it is about this year, but we've had a lot more mosquitoes in Colorado than we usually do. Usually, I don't even think about bringing bug spray, but these last few trips that I've been on have made me reconsider. We found a couple spots along the trail that looked promising, so we went back to grab our gear, at least I did, and we're going to go out there and see if we can get a couple of browns. After that, we'll probably just pack up and leave because we still have to go 6 miles back to the parking lot, and then we have to drive almost 4 hours back home. So we're at the spot now. I already had one bite, but he spat out my hook, so I'm going to try casting in that white water again and seeing if maybe I can get another one. The trout here get way bigger than some of the other trout fishing streams that we visit during the summer. There is also absolutely nobody on this trail this high up, so it's a really good backpacking spot. Whitewater Rapids add a whole new dimension to this setup, mostly chaos. Everything is moving, including you. The currents split in unpredictable ways, forming seams and eddies and weird backflows that fish absolutely love but make it a nightmare to get a clean drift. But we did get one, and he's a pretty decent size. So we're gonna let him go, and then we'll be heading back to camp. I'm trying to call my fishing partner over here to show him what I caught, so hopefully I can get his attention before it's too late. Honestly, the kind of reach and control is hard to beat. I've pulled trout out of tiny little buckets in the middle of raging flows where a western fly rod would have been a total pain. The downside, hooking a decent sized fish in fast water with no reel, is basically a test of your survival instincts. You've got to steer it, keep the line tight, and figure out how to land it before it decides to cartwheel downstream. Alright, so we're all packed up, and we're ready to finally make our trip back. It's going to be about 6 miles. On my way here, I didn't take any breaks, so going back down, I'm not going to take any breaks either. And here's somebody checking up on our campsite to see if we left any food. But anyways, I'll see you guys next time. I think I can get one more trip in this season, and that'll be the end of the season for me.